Reading from the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 16, verses 5 through 8. Thus says the Lord, "Cursed are those who trust in mere mortals and make mere flesh their strength, whose hearts turn away from the Lord. They shall be like a shrub in the desert and shall not see when relief comes. They shall live in the parched places in the wilderness, in an uninhabited salt land. Blessed are those who trust in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. They shall be like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes. Its leaves shall stay green. In the year of drought, it is not anxious. It does not cease to bear fruit." Here's the science lesson. Redwood trees are the tallest trees on the planet, some measuring close to 400 feet tall. That's a 22-story building. It's about the same height as the Statue of Liberty. Gives you some perspective. How do they stay standing up for literally hundreds of years? Tall structures require significant foundations, but redwood trees do not have deep roots. The roots are only 6 to 12 feet deep. That's about as tall as 1 or 2 Mike Franks. And they have no taproot to go down deep into the well of water. They rarely fall. They seem to defy the laws of physics. So how do they do it? These trees can grow tall and stay upright for hundreds of years because their roots spread out, and they also intertwine and connect with other trees in the grove. They literally hold each other up. Redwood trees are communities, neighborhoods. Their roots extend over 100 feet in diameter. They are in each other's space, in each other's business, okay? A group of us has been pondering the wisdom of stability, of being rooted in a place among a particular community. After all, this community of faith has been going on for 140 years now, right? Congregational life certainly brings people into each other's space and each other's business. Sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes we get on each other's nerves. Imagine that. We're a school. We're a school teaching and learning together the art of grace. We're a school for learning to grow ourselves up in Christ, doing our work, facing our inner demons. We're a school of love, of forgiveness, patience, and more. We are learning the art of these virtues, and we're learning them together. So if you do not want to learn how to do these things in a very practical setting, if you say, I am what I am and I don't want to change, well, you're probably not ready for congregational life. Change is hard. It is disruptive. And given the rapid pace of change in our society and the rapid changes happening all the time, it's overwhelming. How many times do I have to relearn how to use an app on my phone when it's been updated? I have to relearn the whole thing again? We long for things to stay the same. And then the stability which we've been pondering and exploring, though, is not about keeping things the same and growing rigid. It is committing to a place and a people so that we are transformed, so that we grow more flexible and generous with God's grace and with our love. But when we feel buffeted by the winds of constant change, we need words of comfort and encouragement, not judgment and shame. The prophet Jeremiah does this for the Israelites who are exiled to Babylon. The prophet Jeremiah does speak judgment, yes, But he also speaks and prophesies words of comfort and encouragement to the exiles in Babylon, taken away from all they knew, completely destabilized, ripped from their community, from their religious practice, their families. They're bereft, completely bereft. How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? That's their song. Transplanted out of the nourishing waters of ritual practice, the nurturing soil of community, the exiles could have easily disappeared, died on the vine. But Jeremiah wanted to help ameliorate the shock that comes with transplant. Transplanting plants is always a bit sketchy, requires a gardener or an arborist to take precautions, pay attention during the transition. Jeremiah is saying, pay attention, be intentional during this transition. He uses the tree metaphor to provide some guidance. Be planted near water, in an arid place where the usual community and spiritual resources are not as readily available. You are going to have to be more intentional. The culture is not going to just provide it for you. When this congregation was formed, going to church was normative. Social structures made church participation more doable, participation in voluntary civic organizations as well. But still, less than 30% of the general United States population actually participated in a congregation. But still, the social structures had supported voluntary participation, not only in faith communities, but in civic groups. It was there. There was something that supported that kind of behavior. There was a large volunteer workforce provided by married women of a certain economic class. Both my grandmothers worked, so the myth about the stay-at-home mom just doesn't fly with me. The work week did not include a 1 to 1.5 hour commute, sometimes more. So people had time to volunteer, like on a church board or get ready to teach a Sunday school class. Even professional workers had more time away from work, and companies had an expectation that their professional employees would contribute to the common good in their communities. Historians say that the post-World War II era is a period called the Great Acceleration. Been have the foot on the gas pedal ever since the end of World War II. To be in community is hard. People don't feel like they have time to take care of themselves, their families, much less be involved in their community or their congregation. To be in community, intentional community, is decidedly countercultural. We may at times feel like the exiles in a land that has forgotten or just doesn't even know how to value the sacred around us, within us, the sacred pulsing through all of life. We may feel sucked dry by the increasing pace of the world as it is. Being intentional about a faith community, it can feel like just one more thing on a to-do list. I've no doubt there were among the exiles in Babylon plenty of people who figured it was no use, why bother, it just doesn't matter anymore. What's the point? But Jeremiah doesn't give up on them because he knows God doesn't give up on them, and God doesn't give up on us. Trees don't decide to be planted near the water. They don't, I think I'll go up over there. That looks like a better spot. I'll move over there. They just grow better near the water. We get to actually choose to be planted by the streams of living water. We get to choose to put ourselves in the nurturing and, yes, sometimes disruptive soil of faith community. There was a time about 20 years or so ago, there was talk about moving the congregation a fifth time This is its 4th location in the city of Pomona, but this time, maybe we should move out of the city. The congregation wasn't changing as the surrounding community was changing, nor was it seeking out a particular niche, what it felt its call was at the time. So the decision was to not decide, which is a decision in and of itself, right? The decision not to decide. And that opened the doors to reimagine. Imagine that. Rooted in the love of Christ, we began to grow roots of grace and tapped into the spiritual gift of hospitality that was beginning to re-emerge. Don't take it for granted, because it wasn't always here. Other congregations throughout this country were boldly taking the step to declare they would not merely be open to people who identify as gay or lesbian, they would also be affirming. They weren't saying, oh, we welcome you, now change. There are some churches in this city that do that. I've met with people who have left those churches. Instead, they were proclaiming, welcome as the child of God you are right now, created in God's own image, as you are right now. Mary Ann Parrott is a name some of you will recognize. She was a longtime member of this congregation along with her husband Rod. They're now retired and enjoying life in Oregon. The congregation, after a number of years of conversation, agreed on a welcoming statement. And really, Mary Ann is the one who planted some of the first seeds, grafted some of the first branches. And we have realized that there are many other people damaged by the church who need to know there are Christians who affirm who they are created to be. Mary Ann was a very quiet, gentle, hospitable presence in this congregation. And so when she persevered and kept, we need to think about, we need to talk about this, eventually people listened and started joining the chorus. And that's why we say we welcome members and friends of the LGBTQI and questioning community each Sunday, because they need to know there is a safe place, because they've been traumatized in other sanctuaries. The congregation began to understand its mission as we didn't decide to move. The congregation began to see that its mission was beyond providing program. We began proclaiming the gospel, the good news, every Sunday, welcoming everyone to the table of Christ. That simple and profound and repeated practice, that's important, it's a repeated practice, has more than anything else, I think, reshaped this congregation from the one I began serving 35 years ago. So when you wonder why it's important for us to talk theology, think about our faith in light of the world we inhabit, please remember this, that if we hadn't done that, I think we'd still be having the Christmas ham dinner with the craft fundraiser with the little plastic Delima bobs that they sold. Maybe that sounds like, oh, what was that like? Well, let's just say it outlived its time. If the people before us hadn't been rooted in the teaching to love our neighbor, we wouldn't have Hope Partners or the Our House Shelter to help us reach out. And that same impulse is what motivated our connection into broad-based organizing, first with 1LA and now with ICON. Our roots are connecting with the roots of other faith communities, with unions, with nonprofits. We're in each other's space, in each other's business, if you will. Creating a neighborhood that supports diverse life and vitality, much like a redwood grove. If you've ever walked through a redwood grove, you know it's not just redwoods growing there. There's a lot of a lot of life. Plants, animals, microbes, lots of life. The author of The Wisdom of Stability, the book that we are reading together, writes this: whatever help we may be able to offer someone else, we cannot trust our own fruit to sustain us. Our vitality depends on a root system beneath the surface, tying us to one another, connecting us to the deeper waters of God's sustaining presence. This building is the 4th physical location of First Christian Church Pomona. The church sits on the convergence of 2 underground streams, 2 watersheds. I don't think they knew that when they planted the church. It is a fitting metaphor, I think, that we are planted on streams of water we cannot even see. Like the exiles in Babylon, even in the midst of displacement, disruption, and change, our vitality does not depend on the circumstances we are in or the circumstances we see. These watersheds beneath our feet remind us that growing where we are planted requires us to look to each other, to look to God to sustain us. We may feel uprooted by the circumstances in our lives, but we can remain rooted in the wellspring of God's love and the living water of Christ's community. So let's do that. Let's do that.